Hello, everybody. Welcome to part 2 of classes. And this should be a short video, and we're gonna be talking about constructors, construct. Okay, you get the point. So the whole point of constructors is just to make this part much easier. So you see right now, first we initialize it, then we set the name and we set the age. One thing you could do is, okay, so by default, you do have a constructor, which is called student. It's the same name as the class with brackets and curls. It's like a function that doesn't return anything. That's why you don't put a void here. And what this does is, well, when you initialize it, this gets called and it just initializes the whole thing as it is, and it doesn't do anything. This is the default constructor. Now let's say we want our default constructor to do this, right? So I could, here, we pass this function, the student function, we pass it a string name, and we also pass it an integer age, right? And what do we want it? So you see, as soon as I did that, it says there's no default constructor exists for this class anymore. We could make two constructors, one default. So one I can do like student, and this is the default one. And what this one will do is when you just create this, it will create the instance, it will create all of this without setting anything for these, just like we did here, and you can do it regularly, or you can have it, whoever is creating the instance has to pass it parameters. And so right now when I save this, this should give us an error. Right now, what are these parameters? Is the set name, and set age. When you pass this function these parameters, what do you want the code to do with it? So what we want it to do is call the set age on it, and we give it the age, and we also want it to call the set name. Right? So set name, and we're gonna give it a name. Now I'm still doing this in my header file, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove this actually, and there you go. I'm just gonna initialize it like this, and here we will create it. So I'll say this doesn't return anything. It's a student, and it's a student constructor, and this will take a string name, and it will take an int age. Right, and right here is where we can set it. Whoops, missed a semicolon right there. And what do we want us to do? Like we said earlier, is we want it to call this set name and set age. So set age, and we're gonna pass it age, and set name, and we're gonna pass it name. And so what this will do is we'll go here, get these two variables, call the set and the set age, and then set these to its whatever the values you pass it. Now, what difference does this make? So right now, what you see here, instead of us doing this, we can just do equals. We call the constructor, and we pass it, our name, John, and we can pass it the age. And this basically does the same thing. So you see, if I get rid of this, I do make compile. There you go, and make run. It'll give me the name John. If I change it right here to Mike, and I do make run, this will recompile. You see now the name changed, and since I'm setting it to 16, and I'm calling the get age function, or the set age function, then it's telling me it's too young. You see, if I change this now to 19, this shouldn't tell me any message. Recompile. You see now the age is set to 19. These are constructors in a nutshell, basically. You could make default numbers or names. So you see in my here. So let's set a default constructor. So we're gonna say student default. It doesn't take any parameters, right? And here we're gonna say student, and I'm calling the default student. I'm not passing any parameters, but I'm gonna do some stuff with it. So you're gonna probably think, oh, how does the code differentiate between the default and this one? The way it differentiates is based on parameters. If it sees a string and an integer, it'll be like, okay, I'm gonna use this. If it doesn't see any inputs, it'll be like, okay, I'll use this. So we can set, the name by default. So we're gonna say this name by default. I want you to set it to unknown. And we can say by default, this age is also equals to, well, this is an integer, so I can just make it a -1. We got my semicolons. And you see now, when I don't put parameters in here, and I compile this, make run, it's going to tell me unknown and -1. But if I put parameters, like the name, Johnny, and I don't think that's how you spell Johnny, but we're gonna go with it. 19, and I compile this. What is it? Oh, whoops, this is not a string, this is supposed to be an integer. There you go. You see now it sets it, and these are constructors. Now the other thing, there's something called a deconstructor, and the difference between a constructor and a deconstructor is you put this in front of the constructor, and you can also give it parameters or you don't. The deconstructor, what it's supposed to do is, let's say I created this and I did some stuff with it, and then now it's out of scope, I'm not going to use it anymore, I deleted it. But let's say within this class I have initiated a memory in the heap. All right, so let's create memory in the heap. I'm gonna create it right here. So I have an int pointer. It's just a pointer that's gonna point somewhere in the memory. So let's make this a classes. So this is like the students' classes, you know. And the reason it's in the heap is because, you know, classes are not always the same. Some students have 4, some students have 3. So the size has to change. Some people have, you know, 5 or 6 if you're an engineering student. And so since the size of the array has to change, then we're going to make it in the heap so we can change it. And I'm going to initialize it as 5 because that's like the standard amount of, what do you call it? This is the standard amount of courses somebody would have. And so what I'm going to do is, after I have ran out of scope for this class, for this instance that I just made, what happens to this allocated memory? Remember how we said if you delete a pointer from the heap, then that memory stays allocated, and now you have allocation. Like, you're gonna keep allocating, then you run out of memory. That's not good. What we do in the deconstructor is things that we want to do before we close the class. So we'll just say here ec delete, and then we'll classes. This, I believe, is supposed to be brackets since it's an array. And you see right now what we're telling it is deconstruct, so delete this array before the class goes out of scope. And you never have to call the deconstructor. The deconstructor will get called automatically whenever the compiler sees that, oh, okay, this class is now out of scope, getting deleted. Let me delete this array before I fully close off this class. And that's what you do here. So let's say also within your code, you open a file. By the time you're done with the class, you have to close the file, and you'd close it here. You can still close it within your code, but just to be sure, this is just like last case scenario. Let me make sure I've done the things that I have to do before I get rid of this class. And that's also constructors in a nutshell. You could do some stuff. You see, like for your deconstructor, you could do all sort of things here. You could do anything, just like a function. It's just this is called when you construct the class. And that's constructors for classes.